Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this new episode of Campfire. I say that all the time, and it's real. I say it all the time that I'm super excited by this particular campfire. And every time I say it's true, and it is again true, I'm really, really pumped to have both Kate and Jonika with us today. This is the second, I will say, of a series of campfires that we're going to have with our good friends from Google. Just a few words on the Google partnership before we introduce you, Jonika, and Kate. We just announced about 2 weeks ago now that we were doing really interesting things together. It's primarily focused on our front end and full stack bootcamp that are really made for beginners to get from not knowing to code to becoming front end or full stack. And we're really injecting Google Cloud content. And it's a set of labs that really walk you through how to actually interact and engage with the Google Cloud. And then on top of that, we also have a Google Cloud Women in Tech scholarship and plenty of already fantastic videos from applicants, video essays to actually share with us why they really will benefit and what it means to them to receive that scholarship. So we're very happy about that. And then another thing about the partnership is students will have actually access for 12 months to the Google Labs platform. There's something about the cloud, which is every time you use the cloud, you actually use compute. You use a CPU, you use bandwidth, and of course, somebody has to pay for it. But this time around, the Google team has been nice enough to really provision and subsidize, I would say, access for 12 months. So that's pretty much the gist of it. With that said, we are streaming right now on live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. I see Krista is here. I see Kot Thin is here. If you have questions, please feel free to ask your questions on the chat. So any of those three platforms, you ask those questions, we'll see them here, and we'll actually get to answer them with Jonika and Kate. All right, that's the intro. With that, Jonika and Kate, would you mind introducing yourself? Where are you dialing in from? What do you do at Google? And then we'll do another one to really dive into your background and how you got into Google and what you do over there. Jonika, why don't you start maybe?
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Jonika. I am calling from Sunnyvale in California. Super excited to be here. And what I do is I have the joy of actually working with Ludo and working out anything that needs to be done for the Nucamp partnership so that all of you can be successful as you are working with us and are working to improve yourselves. And then in addition to that, I'm also trying to prove that there's definitely value to learning and development, that it means you can get employed and do lots of good things. So we are working on some research to prove the beauty of what you're doing to future employers.
Awesome. What about you, Kate?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Custerman Rivera. I am so happy to be here. I am dialing in from lovely Chicago, where it's full-on fall weather. I am brand new at Google, actually. I think I'm in week 7. I am the global head of cloud learning offers at Google Cloud. So I'm extremely happy to be here. I get a chance to work with Jonika, which is really fun, and other wonderful people. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Kate. So I have a few questions that I think the audience will really want to ask and understand. Google is a big company, and you're working in a team that has a unique mission. Can you actually describe to us what your group is about? I mean, it's part of Google, but it's part of what, and what really are you supporting inside Google?
Yeah, I'm happy to take a little stab if you don't mind. So within Google, there's multiple products. Everyone knows search, of course, and other things. We're in Google Cloud, so specifically in the cloud and specifically in learning services. So really if I had to kind of say what we're about, we are really about upskilling people literally across the world, whether you're in a big company, whether you're yourself as an individual, whether you're a student, everyone, upskilling people around the world really to get the right skills to be able to really lead in a cloud-first world, which is the world we're in, and doing that on Google Cloud. So that's what I see as our kind of high-level, big-picture mission.
And within that group, you and Jonika have a special aspect of it, or a special ownership of it, I think. What are you doing within that group, and what are you leading in particular?
Yeah, Jonika, you want to talk about a little bit of maybe the example of what you're doing?
Yeah, I can talk about what I'm doing. So as we're looking at learning and development, there's many different ways that it can be done right and we can go to market, but we have specifically chosen to partner with a select number of partners that have the customer base, have the desire, the passion, have the recognition of what it takes to be successful in cloud. So that is one of the ways, and that's why we're working with Nucamp. That is one of the partners that we are taking this solution of curriculum to market. And then some other things that we're also looking at is trying to understand what exactly do you need to be successful in cloud? Is it curriculum? Is it content? Is it the right cohort? Is it the right professor? And again, making sure that we are co-creating that in partnership model. And then lastly, really understanding through research with companies like IDC, Gartner, et cetera, what is needed from employers, because it goes both ways, right? Like, what do you need in order to be employed, but also what employers are looking for and how we can empower you through education to get that. So those are a few of the ways in which we are going to market, empowering the curriculum, empowering the right partners, and then making sure that we've got the research to prove the value of learning and development.
That's great. And maybe to help also orientate the audience, I think the official Google certifications come from your organization, right? And I know that's something that has been very present in the industry, in the tech industry for years, decades almost. So if anyone out there is thinking about taking a Google certification, chances are you are going to, prepare and take a certification prepared by your organization. And then you have those labs that we've talked about as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm chuckling at Krista's comment and the end,
yes.
of course.
Thank you, Krista. Krista is actually one of our students, and as she said earlier, rarely misses a campfire. And so thank you for planting that in, Krista. I really appreciate. So I want to ask you both, because I believe your own journey did not exactly start, in the computer science space. You didn't start from the beginning at Google. So maybe one after the other, if you wouldn't mind taking us through, that journey. Where did you start? And I actually like to go back to college days. Like, what did you actually study? Did you continue with that, those same skills? Was your first job in what you learned in college or university? And how did you make your way into Google to where you are right now?
Do you want me to take this first,
Sure,
Kate?
but go ahead and start, please. Yeah.
Super. So one important thing to note about me is that actually I'm not originally from here. I'm half Greek and half Albanian. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because my identity being first an immigrant, I was always like, how do I understand this culture? How do I, and honestly, in the beginning, I came in high school, I thought a lot of things were nonsensical. So I'm this high school kid that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is stupid. That's stupid. This is stupid. And my instructor was like, how about you just call it different? It's not stupid. It's different. It's different from your culture. So I started calling it's different. But honestly, it still meant the same thing until much later. But in terms of what I thought I was going to do, I thought I was going to be with United Nations, change the world, fight wars. I was coming from a civil unrest in Albania at the time in 1997, followed by a war in Kosovo in 1998. So I studied political science, Spanish, and creative writing, and then did nonprofit for a couple of years. It was very successful at making absolutely no profit for anyone involved. And I applied to Google. And my cover letter, nobody taught me what to write in the cover letter. So it basically said, I am interested in the vice president, director, and senior director role, and I think I can learn. So anyway, I got hired as a contractor. Neither of those level 0 at Google 18 years ago. And here we are today.
Oh, that's amazing. And I mean, I checked your LinkedIn profile. You were an entrepreneur for many years as well, right? You really helped
Yeah,
immigrants join
and
the country.
refugees. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit more. I mean, from level zero contractor,
Uh-huh.
um, not the vice president title just yet.
Not
Um,
not not
I
not
mean,
ever at this point,
you've
but that's
had
okay.
you've had so many eclectic experiences at Google with always still, I think your hard work, you can tell, is still, in helping others rise. Can you share a little bit about what was your trajectory and how did you weave those two things together?
Yeah.
Working at Google and really supporting others.
Yeah. I'll be completely honest. In the beginning, it was shape away anything that doesn't fit. Don't talk about the fact that you're not American. Don't talk about the fact that you have an accent. I mean, I have an accent. It is what it is. Hide the feminine. Just be driven. And the first 10 years were actually working with automotive dealers. I didn't even drive a car in my country or a bike until I was in my 20s. Um, and then with time, I realized there is power in who we are. And there is power in being authentic and saying, this is who I am. I am an immigrant and I own it. And I'm going to raise others up as I rise myself up. And if that's problematic for the leader you're working with, then maybe that's not the right organization you're working in. But it took a while to get to that, honestly. It took a while of many years of hiding to be like, I'm here and it's okay being me.
That's awesome. We'll definitely get back to that. I want to ask Kate the same question
Good.
first. And as you can see, Jonika and Kate, we have someone who just joined called Chris without camera. So that's actually an opportunity for anyone to join the floor and be live with us. I wonder which Chris that is. I don't know. But Chris, if you want to join us and ask your question live with us, I want to see you and the camera. Actually, I want to check really the camera before bringing you onto the floor. If not, I'll just remove you from here. And we already have a few questions that we'll get to. But first, Kate, I mean, very much same question for you. You just joined Google and you've
Mhm.
had a really interesting journey before that. Do you mind walking us through that journey and again, go back to the college days and what you learned there and why did that work or not work? Maybe, I don't know.
Yep. Yes, good old college days. I started my journey at Purdue in West Lafayette, Indiana.
Yeah.
What was great about that is, I was a kid who actually really loved math and science. So I decided, why not? I'm going to try this engineering thing. Though I must say, I was the first one in my family to do that. But what I really realized that I liked doing was kind of defining and solving problems. That was it.
Mhm.
So engineering was a great way to do that. And I think I always go back to my Purdue days, and I am so grateful because I think we had to solve 100 problems a day. I think, I don't know, for every class. And so by the time I exited that place, I was just comfortable with problem solving, defining, getting to root cause, and then solving problems. So anyway, the engineering mindset, I think, is kind of where I started. But I also quickly realized once I got into the working world that I also really loved leading teams. Like, I loved it. That really lit me up. And I liked the business side of things, but I didn't really have that background. So I decided to get my MBA and kind of complement the, technical part with the business part. So that was, I think, a good combination for me.
Did
I've
you
ended
work
up,
in between? Did you work
yeah,
on? Oh, okay.
I did. Yeah. So right after engineering school, I went to Procter and Gamble,
Okay.
which was a pretty interesting job. What I learned there is, first of all, I was a product development
Mhm.
engineer in packaging, but what I learned was, really the voice of the customer. P&G is excellent at not only branding and marketing, but really getting into the customer voice, even as an engineer. So, literally going around to different Walgreens and watching customers shop and taking notes and observing and things like that. So anyway, so yes, I had a chance to work at P&G before I went back for my MBA, and then my journey. I've kind of experienced a sampler platter of corporate America, so P&G and Motorola as well. Government, I worked for the city of Chicago, believe it or not, for a while, for the mayor. Consulting, I just came from Deloitte, and then kind of big tech. Here I am at Google. So it's really been neat to see different viewpoints of what's out there in the market. And then coming back to how did I really get into tech? Like, how did I get out of kind of mechanical engineering and into tech? I would say the pivot happened when I was at the city of Chicago. So I was brought in to do basically procurement redesign. So literally redesign the purchasing process at the city of Chicago. So I did that with lots of input and people, as part of that.
I'm guessing there were a lot of people looking at your work.
Yes, imagine, right? Yes.
What you were going to find.
That's exactly right. Yeah, yep. And it was about a $1 billion purchasing, procurement spend. I mean, lots of attention on this. But after the redesign, we did current state, best practices, visioning, and laid out, this is the new process. I said, great, someone can now implement the technology that will, bring that new process to life. And I was going to say goodbye. However, the person who was queued up to do that, who was another gentleman that I was working with, quit. So I had a decision to make. And really, I felt I am not qualified to do this.
Oh.
Has anyone ever felt that way? Right? Really, I don't know how to run it was an Oracle ERP, massive $25 million system implementation. And I thought, well, I don't have that background.
Wow.
So I had a big choice, and I was lucky because I had an amazing boss at the time who was the chief information officer of the city, the CIO. And she said, Kate, I got your back. You can do this. You can do this. I'm going to be there right with you, step by step with you, but you can do this, and I have your back. So go for it. And honestly, that it was kind of the vote of confidence I needed to say, oh, all right, yeah, I can do this. Here we go. So 46 months later, literally, 46 months later, we went live with that huge system at the city, Oracle system. It's a financial and purchasing system. And it's still live to this day, still working. Anyway, so I would say that was my big pivot of getting into tech. And then ultimately other steps have happened since then. But once I got that live and once it was stable, I said, okay, now I can go. And I found this opportunity at Deloitte at the time. Deloitte and McKinsey and other consulting firms were kind of QA watching over us to make sure that we would not fail, that my project wouldn't fail. That's how I got to know Deloitte. And so I ended up going into technology consulting at Deloitte, which turned out to be a great opportunity for me. Lots of roles there. The most recent one was the last 4 years in cloud. So that's how I got the pivot into cloud, specifically as the cloud capability development leader, which basically is a long title just to say the person who was in charge of building and scaling the cloud skilled workforce at Deloitte. So that's kind of the journey. Yeah.
Super impressive. There's really a ton that I'd like to unpack before moving to answering some of those questions. So first, you jumped into IT without. I mean, you had an engineer expertise and you had the mindset of an engineer in a way, but you jump into IT without really having any IT background.
Yep.
And that's huge, just because someone really trusted you. And I've seen someone, just congratulating you for that, or your manager at the time to having your back. There's also something that we tell our aspiring developers and people that are changing careers, that you probably have an ideal role in mind of what you want to be. You want to be a software engineer, you want to be a cloud engineer, but you should really think about the steps that are going to get you there. And you may not have that ideal role first. You may just find, the consulting engagement that's going to bring you closer to the CIO. That's then going to put their trust in you to actually get to that job. So it's always a series of actions, and a series of decisions to get you closer to where you want to be. And then something that's very true that we also want people to hear, it's all about networking and who you know, because who you actually engage with, who you work with, who can trust you. And that moment where you go from the city of Chicago to Deloitte, I mean, there's no, it's not chance. It's you've worked with them, you've networked with them, they knew you, and that gave you your new opportunity. It's also something, the audience, when they finish a boot camp or when they finish their study, they know their instructors, they're going to know their teammates. And then what they start now is a journey of 200 resumes sent on LinkedIn or Indeed a week, hoping that one is going to pan out. And oftentimes that's not necessarily the right approach. I mean, you want to do some of that, but you really want to think about, okay, who do I connect with? Who do I really engage to actually have that relationship? And someone is going to think about me maybe in 6 months, maybe in 9 months, and bring me on board. All right. So let's, and I want to go back to that Deloitte program as well. And we'll talk about, well, first, what is Deloitte? What do they do? And before doing that, I'd love to actually see some of the questions that we have from the audience. Let's actually go at the top. Vincenzo from Seattle, currently attending our Python, SQL, and DevOps course. What other cloud type of courses will you recommend for the next step in this learning platform? Let's see if we can maybe expand that a little bit. When you think about learning the cloud, the cloud is huge, right? It pretty much tries to cover everything that we can think of in IT.
Yeah.
What would you say will be a good step-by-step way to enter the cloud? How would you, what would you start with maybe? And what are the kind of the things that you cannot miss? You have to know this. And I know before we started this stream, we had a conversation on Kubernetes. Like it's the GOAT, the greatest of all times. Like you cannot miss Kubernetes. But what would you say, someone thinking about, okay, I want to be in the cloud, I want to be a cloud engineer. What would be kind of the top things that come to mind to answer that?
Yeah. So my 2 cents, first of all, I think where you are starting is absolutely where you should start, because code is the baseline, right? That is the basis of it. So either Python or Java, and you're taking Python, which is great. And I think aspects of modern delivery are really critical as well. So DevOps, Agile, design thinking, all three of those areas I would say would be also important, to kind of complement that. And then really, again, this is my 2 cents. Right now, there is an absolute massive talent shortfall in the area of cloud, period, in the market, in the world. And where it's particularly acute is around developers. So builders, people who can really, who understand cloud native development, who know how to work with containers, with microservices, Kubernetes, etc. So anything that you can do to round yourself out as what I'd call a cloud native developer or cloud developer is where I'd say is your biggest bang for the buck next.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've always put full stack developers on that pedestal of, the jack of all trades, I can do everything. But actually, we're making it even more challenging now. We're saying, yeah, full stack is great, but full stack and cloud is even better, right? Because you really have to know how to publish it, how to work with others and stuff. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. I think a question that will actually be interesting for many as well. Some people who really look at coding bootcamps, of course, are also thinking about certifications, right? Like, should they do one or the other? Should they do both? What would you say are the prerequisites for becoming a Google Cloud engineer?
Yep. So again, I'm happy to take this, but Jonika, feel free to chime in. So what I would say, and we were looking at this a lot back in my old days at Deloitte around really what are the prereqs, what is going to make you successful so that when you go on the journey of learning to become a Google Cloud certified engineer or, whatever, you are ready. What I would say, first of all, really, truly is the desire. That's probably the number one. Honestly, the fact that you really want this. You're not doing this because somebody says is important, but desire is such a huge part of it, frankly, because it is a journey and it's some extra work, and likely it's work you're doing on top of your other job, the real job that you have right now. But in terms of, getting a little bit more nitty gritty, I would say probably three things. This is, again, my opinion. Have basics in one coding language, one programming language, Python or Java, I would say. Second would be, basic understanding of databases. Again, basic. And third, I would say kind of an overall understanding of the SDLC, the software development lifecycle. Those would be the three prerequisites, I would say, that would set you up really well to, to get a certification in cloud, in Google Cloud in particular. Yeah.
It's really great to hear you say how much really understanding the foundations of coding and how programs are made are super important to then really understand and manipulate the cloud. I want to. Yes,
Ludo, let me just chime in. It's not what the question asks, but from having interviewed and managed people for the past 12 plus years at Google, I wanted to throw this thing out from the intangibles. And sometimes folks come in and interviewing, they've got the technology, they've got the skill sets. So the three things that I look for when I'm interviewing someone, and I'm not technical, so I'm putting it from the business leader that is looking at an engineer, whether they're the right fit or not. Three things: know the values of the company you're interviewing for. They're very different. Like Google has humility, other companies have being right often, other companies will have the customer is number one. And I'm not saying that they're not one with Google, but number one, know the values of the company you're interviewing for. Then two, in an engineering framework, plug in what examples you have done, whether it's been as a student or whether it's been through your job experience that showcase that value. And then the third one, when someone asks you, now tell me of a time when things didn't work out. Don't give the example of, I'm a workaholic. I work really hard and I'm working on that. Like, be real. People are real. They figure out when what you're saying is something that you're truly working on versus not. I'm not saying commit career suicide and say something so out there that the person is like, I would never hire you. But find that happy balance of knowing the values, knowing why your example fits in with the value of the company. And number three, when they say, give me an area of development that you're working through, be real and say, this is something I'm working on. And I have a plan on working on that. And this is what it looks like. So I just wanted to bring that it's the technical, but it's also the intangibles that will get you through the door.
It's a great point. And so a lot of folks, who graduate from a coding bootcamp and are career shifter feel even more vulnerable, I will say, during an interview, because they have a huge imposter syndrome. And yet what you're saying is spot on. You still have to be able to, portray yourself, truly, honestly, with shows of strength and weaknesses. But then when you have an imposter syndrome, super strong, and you're like, I don't know, like Kate, maybe when you first got into that IT position, how do you manage those emotions and still talk about your weaknesses, or maybe, and be that truthful person when you feel like you want to actually hide some of it?
Yeah.
I can pick it, but
go ahead, and then I'll pile on. Yeah.
I was just going to say that the imposter syndrome for me was really hard. And you'd think that at 18 years, I had the opportunity to take a book of business that was super small in automotive, build Google $1 billion. I'm actually curious how that compares to Albania's GDP. I'm going to have to check it out after this. You think it goes down, but actually sometimes the more you achieve, the more that inner critic is still there. Mm-hmm. And for those of us that are parents, it's like with a toddler, they don't know enough. They'll always be there. They'll always be screaming and throwing a temper tantrum. And the question is having a bit of self-love and self-compassion for that toddler that is terrified. Sometimes they'll always be there. And that's from the perspective of someone that's worked in engineering with a political science degree and English as a second language. And sometimes it goes away, but it doesn't always, and that's okay.
Yeah, And just to pile on around imposter syndrome, I think this is very real, especially for women. I think for many people, but I will say especially for women, I have seen it and read it. It comes up a lot. I can imagine completely making a career change. It's also very real. I would say a couple things about it. One is acknowledge it. Just acknowledge that that's how you're feeling. And then remind yourself that, heck yes, you have earned your right to be there, to be in that conversation, to be having that interview, to be, etc. Right? So you've earned the right to be there. And to Jonika's point too, bring up examples. Remind yourself of the examples that even you did, let's say in the boot camp, of something that you built that you had never built before, and now you built with a team, and you can talk about your role in that team, what you built, how you solved that customer problem, etc. Right? Something that demonstrates the value of what you built. And I would say
Go for it. Sorry.
I was going to say one other thing about imposter syndrome, because I think this is such a key syndrome that really we all do have. I've been reading about it more because I think it's so interesting, and it is truly something that everyone has. So here's an example that I think is very interesting about Beyonce. And I'm going to bring this up even though it sounds goofy, but imagine, biggest superstar pretty much in the world, or one of the biggest, right? So she has imposter syndrome. So what she did to overcome it, and there's some interesting videos on it on YouTube and some other places, but it's a concept called character invention. And it's an actual technique called character invention that is based on neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, no joke. And it's basically create or invent a character who can do whatever feels scary to you. For Beyonce, she literally created a character called Sasha Fierce.
I didn't know all that.
It's really interesting, yes. And there are 5 steps to it. One is envision that character, like visualize the character. Second, find a name. So Beyonce picked Sasha Fierce. So find a name, something compelling and exciting for you. Third, source the trigger. For her, it is literally putting on her high heels to go about to go out to her show. So source the trigger, whatever the trigger is. Fourth, develop the physicality, like what is it that character embodies? And then fifth, practice. And I've read things that say you can even go to Starbucks as your character. No one needs to know, right? Practice it. Anyway, I think it's so interesting because here we are all talking about it. Everyone, even the biggest superstar in the world, right? So there are ways to conquer it. And there are ways to, kind of get creative. And I think that's an interesting one. So
it's huge. So I've been playing Renaissance, which is Beyonce's latest album, in loop. I'm serious. I'm looping Beyonce's latest album for the past 2 weeks. And I've never thought that what you were saying was true, because she's full, 100%, 150% full of confidence in this album. But I get it now. I will have to, read the lyrics or listen to the lyrics. If it's actually Beyonce singing or Fierce?
No, Sasha Fierce.
It may be, I really have to listen to the lyrics now even more and see if Sasha lyrics is singing.
But you're going to have an action item, Ludo. Next time, you're going to have a name that is not Ludo. I don't know if it's Ludo Fierce or what it is. But what's your alter ego now?
That's right. Oh my God.
So the way I want to relate it back though to like real world here, because none of us are Beyonce, is imagine you're walking into your first interview, or imagine you're actually in your first job and you're leading your team and you're like, where do I start? Right. So think about this. I mean, this could be a way to do it, but really kind of visualize. There's another idea called Ring of Fire technique. It's very similar. It's also based on this NLP. But just think about how you could kind of translate that to your own imposter syndrome, or what you could do about it.
Wow, that's huge. One of the title is Cozy, and I remember the lyrics of that one. It's Cozy with Myself. Like she's like, hey, I'm good. I like myself. I'm good with it.
There you go.
Brilliant. Okay, so call to action for everyone. Listen to Beyonce's Renaissance latest album. Highly rated, by the way. It's a great, great album from Beyonce. And remember where she's coming from and what she had to struggle with. And that's going to make the album even better.
There you go.
So, Jonika, you mentioned that you interviewed engineers. And I want to bring the focus on one experience you had at Google, which is you were part of the actual engineering team, I think, and I'm looking from your LinkedIn profile right now,
Yes.
Chief of Staff, Developer Relations, Google Engineering.
Yeah.
So you were there, right? The heart, the soul of Google, the engineers. What was it? What was it like? What was it like? What was, I mean, the environment? What's the percentage of male in that group? Percentage of female? What was it like to be a chief of staff working in that group? If you don't mind me asking,
No,
and
yeah,
sharing
yeah.
a little bit.
Honestly, so it was a job number 4 for me at Google. If you think in terms of the product areas at Google, I've been with business, sales, and operations, and that's where I built $1 billion. And thank you, Victor, for pointing out Albania's GDP. Good to know in the comments. And then I pivoted to Android partner and ecosystem, where I did business development and did a couple of other roles in learning and development. So when I joined as the chief of staff, I have to say my imposter syndrome and shame were like all high. Everyone was hyper rational. And here I am thinking, can we do some breathing exercises? And then what about feelings? And I know that engineers don't have feelings. I'm married to an engineer and he shares those feelings openly. But I was being very stereotypical, and I had a chip on my shoulder that I had not gone to a top school. It was like top 10 Southern liberal arts college in the South, like a no-name school. If that's why I went and I got my MBA to feel a bit better. But what I found, yes, it was primarily male. I was in the leadership team. I was the only female in the leadership team as a chief of staff. But what I found was that there was a genuine desire to look within and do things differently. Just because the leadership team looked that way, it doesn't mean that it has to continue to look that way. It doesn't represent the real world having no diversity. And then I found a mix of people in lower levels of the organization really caring, and some people at the very top not necessarily understanding the challenges across the different levels. And then my job was back to be an interpreter, like funny enough, like went back full circle and say, this is what the organization is feeling. They're feeling that we say we care about culture and diversity, but that we do not represent that. What do we do about it? We have this thing that's called Google Guys. That's basically a survey of the organization, and 500 plus people said, these are the values that matter. Integrity matters. What we say at I/O matters. How do we build better products that represent the world, not what it's always been? So it was really beautiful to take that feedback and to try to do something with it in a team kind of setting. But it was challenging too, for sure.
Yeah, I imagine. Thank you. All right, so let's take a few more questions. And then I'd love to talk about, Kate, your experience at Deloitte and really diving into that topic. Let's see. All right, there's one here.
Victor's got a good question about pivoting.
There you go.
Oh, look at me.
That's the one.
Woo!
So would you say that being able to pivot and learn new technologies while on the job a big plus? How do companies weigh knowledge versus ability to learn, aka a scrappy developer?
Heck yes. So, I mean, again, I'm just going to jump in because, look, it is all about skill building right now in the world, in the market. It's actually not about what school you went to, which degree you have. It is about your skills. So being able to learn new skills and pivot while you're in a job is incredibly valuable. And it is right now. And I want to read one interesting quote, if I may, about cloud and why cloud is so critical. So a couple things about cloud real quick, if you don't mind. I'm just going to go and say this. Look, we are in a inflection point in history. and I say this to my team too, it's really the truth. We are in the fourth industrial and digital revolution right now, and it's driven by cloud. So there was a Forbes article in last year called "The Tech Talent War Has No End in Sight." So I just want to read like 2 sentences here. The COVID-19 pandemic caused an unprecedented wave of tech adoption for businesses across all industries as companies learn to work remotely, like we all did, and connect with customers virtually. They essentially crammed a decade's worth of tech adoption and digital transformation into a single whirlwind year. So that is an amazing statement, and it's true, right? We felt it 10 years of tech adoption and transformation in 1 year. And what's happening now is there is an incredible, massive, like millions and millions of people type size of a tech talent shortage, specifically in cloud. So anyone who's listening who is trying to upskill in cloud and in Nucamp and all of these technologies, this is called opportunity.
Yeah.
That is what this is. This is one word, opportunity. This is your time. So absolutely upskilling while you're on your job. If you're not in your job, you're doing it in between. What you're doing is upskilling in tech. This is the time to do it because it's almost, the problem is almost so massive. It's unlimited. It's hard even for Google to imagine how big this problem is. And for me to get my arms around it, but that's what an opportunity it is for you. So
that's huge. 10 years acceleration in just 1 year.
Yep.
And we feel it. You know, it's I've never really thought about, okay, what will the data show? But you feel it, you know it when you're looking at what's going on in the industry. The fact that coding bootcamps did not exist 4 or 5 years ago, and now we benefit from that. But there's a huge demand, and it's extreme. I mean, you see the some of the excess of it, kind of what you see in crypto and the NFTs, the NFTs and all that, but it's kind of a sign that things are going so fast, so rapidly. So it's a great segue, Kate, to talk about how you've addressed that at Deloitte and the program that you run there. Remind me the name, the Cloud Institute, right?
Yes, so, Deloitte Cloud Institute, yep.
Could you introduce us first to Deloitte, the company?
Yep.
And what is Deloitte? And what do they do? What do people working there do?
Yep. So Deloitte is a professional services organization, is the fancy word. It's got 4 businesses: consulting, tax, audit, and financial advisory services. I was in the consulting area. Imagine it's really, so the consulting group is really, they could either be advisors to companies, like to advise them on, hey, how do we grow our market? Or what new business should we be in? Or they can help implement, like, hey, we've got this huge technology system we want to implement. We don't know how to do it. Let's bring in somebody who does, bring in Deloitte. Or they can even help operate. So we already have a system, and so now we just want somebody to help operate that system. So that is professional services. Deloitte is the largest professional services organization in the world. So it's very big. Like I said,
it was an idea of size, like how many employees? Is that something that is public that you can share? Or
I'm sure it is, and I don't know that answer. Maybe somebody
as a company all up, as a company all up, I'm guessing it must be close to half a billion people, like 500,000, sorry. 500,000 employees
worldwide. That's probably right. Yeah,
500,000 employees, right? I know, one of the big consulting firms is in that ballpark as well.
Yeah,
so it's a half a million employee worldwide. And do you know, is that a split, maybe 25% in each category, or consulting is the biggest? Or
consulting is the biggest. Yeah. So interestingly, it used to be that Deloitte was really known as, only as an accounting firm.
Yeah.
Right. And it's absolutely still accounting, but the consulting part of it has become larger and really kind of the engine of growth, frankly. Yeah. So, yeah.
Maybe before we get into the details of the program and what you were trying to accomplish, for everyone listening and wondering, okay, why are we talking about Deloitte? Deloitte, like all top consulting companies, like all top offshore companies, are hiring massively. You're going to tell us, I think, Kate, about how you were upskilling people internally, but there are massive, massive opportunities to get actually your first job at a company like Deloitte.
Yes.
I haven't looked at the website, and we'll probably do that later, but I'll bet they have apprenticeship, they have internships, they have lots of programs to really bring people from diverse backgrounds, diverse education backgrounds as well, into their organization and really strengthen, I will say, the consulting practice. So with that said, that's why we're talking about it. Would you mind describing to us what was as much as you can, obviously, what was it about? What were you trying to accomplish with this cloud program?
Yeah, so the quick background is about 4 years ago, Deloitte made this enormous multi-year investment in cloud. Said, "Hey, we're gonna go big because we see that this is the future," and they're absolutely right. And the tail on this is very long, which is true. So I came in right at the beginning of that, called the Cloud Strategic Growth Offering. And in the capability development area, my job was to look at our capabilities. So there's two ways you can get capabilities, right? One is you can acquire them, hire people. And the second is you can take your people and upskill them. So what we quickly realized is, frankly, we could not hire our way out of this problem. There were not enough people in the market with this skill set. So again, what does that spell for you? Opportunity, opportunity. Okay, secondly, so what do? We have all these other amazing people who are good at technology, they just don't know cloud. We need to upskill them. So frankly, we kind of started with, kind of giving out funding when someone kind of raised their hand. So some group over here says, "Hey, we need funding for some AWS certifications." Somebody else says, "Oh, we need some funding over here for something else, DevOps training." And it was fine, but we realized, you know what? We are being very, this is very disconnected and really disparate. We don't have a true strategic way that we're upskilling. So we said we need to build a true strategy here and have a strategic curriculum. So that's where the Deloitte Cloud Institute was born. We did a lot of conversations with our leaders and really, what are the fundamental skills that we care about? And then we decided to make it a persona-based model. So we grouped it around key personas like developer, architect, engineer, etc. And the main thing we realized is nobody's going to get there if they do it alone.
Oh, tell us about that. That's something that resonates a lot with me.
I know. So we realized, so we experimented with lots of things, right? Just, again, here's some funding to do just on demand, do it on your own, go for it. And then we decided, you know what, let's experiment with a cohort. And we started with a small cohort, 50 people. And we had a learning coach, which was really a volunteer from the business, not a full-time job, more of like a guide, kind of like a TA in a university. That's how I think about it. And we realized, wow, that works because it builds community. It's a stickiness. You have an experience that you go through together and you're accountable. Right. So bottom line is the entire program then became a cohort-based model, which we really do think was the secret sauce. And I'm sure, Ludo, you would say is part of the secret sauce of Nucamp. We also realized that the curriculum had to be multi-mode and applied, meaning even if we did it in a cohort, it couldn't just be online, on-demand learning. So we knew there had to be some curation of best-in-class online learning for sure. And we also needed weekly check-ins, like office hours, and we needed hands-on experiential labs. So we had virtual instructor-led labs and really hands-on where people were truly building containers and things like that. And then the final piece, we realized that every journey had to include a cloud certification. Why? Because for us, that credential was really important and had market relevance. And by the way, for everybody out there, it has a huge market relevance, a real certification in one of the big three hyperscalers, Google being one of them, right? So we knew that was part of it, but not the only thing. So for us, one of our big guiding principles was certification is important, but it's more than just certification. You had to have hands-on experience, true hands-on with the platform, whatever it was, so that by the time you actually got through the learning path, you were equipped to be deployed as a cloud engineer or a cloud developer. So not just that you had a certification, which is great, but you could actually do the work.
Right.
So in any case, we ended up scaling the heck out of this thing. And the goal is that, within several years, I'm not sure if I can tell what the goal is. Anyway, many thousands of people at Deloitte are going through, and we were scaling at the point where, we're almost at 10,000 a year, which was enormous for a cohort-based model. While people were working
without Nucamp's platform.
I know. Yeah. So, but anyway, we had subway maps and learning paths, progression from foundational to advanced, and the whole vision in the end was really to build the market leading cloud skilled workforce so that Deloitte could do the work to assist all these companies who needed the help.
And Deloitte, I think, is considered right now the #1 consulting firm worldwide. It may be a tie, but I think, analysts.
That's what they say.
Yeah. I say that's what I've read. Is definitely at the top, or one of the top consulting firm worldwide. What you've just described is the same inspiration actually got into Nucamp in what we believe works when you're an adult worker, busy life. Because what you didn't necessarily point out, which was almost obvious, is it's part-time. You don't quit your job. Right? You're not going to spend 6 hours in a classroom doing everything you just described. It has to be part-time. There's no other way than to make it work part-time. Mm-hmm. And what we actually try to educate our students and prospect even is underlying that is a concept that is as old as education, not education, but at least, education via media or internet, which is the flipped classroom concept. Mm-hmm. That really much says you don't need to be with your teacher just to listen that teacher giving you a lecture when there's no engagement. And it's just something that repeats itself all the time. You need to be with the TA when you're hands-on, when you're actually applying the knowledge. That's when you need your teacher. And today's education, the whole thing is, in reverse. You are with the teacher during the day, but then you do your exercises at night on your own. And so we're flipping, and that concept has been around, but never really implemented at scale. I mean, you did it, right, at Deloitte, but never really implemented at scale beyond actually, I would say, vocational schools or post-graduation or post-traditional education. Imagine if that was applied to traditional education. Yeah. Right? That will be significant. And I could go on and on talking about lifelong learning, because lifelong learning is based on the flipped classroom concept. You cannot be a lifelong learner and say, hey, I'm going to stop working for 2 years because now I need to get my MBA.
Yeah. So can I make one quick point just to pile on that? So one of the issues going on with kind of traditional universities is, and this is, I did some research on for a kind of a point of view. I wrote on this around this talent crunch. How do you get out of it? Mm-hmm. In any case, what I found was 95%, think about this, 95% of university tech curriculum takes 2 years to develop or change. 95. So basically all of tech curriculum takes 2 years at a university to develop or change, meaning there's no way in that they can stay up with it, right? So universities cannot keep up with the pace. Thus, this bridge to academia has to be filled some other way, right? Through things like what you're doing. So it's really interesting, because I think the mental model we've all had for a long time is, universities will take care of this, right? Mm-hmm. You just get the new fresh computer science person and we're done. So I think the reality is there's got to be this kind of something that fills the gap.
No, totally. And one of the effect of that is universities are going to focus on what's very relevant, which is fundamental knowledge, right? Computer science, programming in general, and super helpful to build up your skills. But then they don't know how to deploy your website, and that's okay. But you're right. At some point, they're going to know how to build actually a website and deploy your website, and that comes later. So. And I know, Kate, you have a hard stop in 5 minutes. There was, oh yes. So I guess it's a dare. I'm gonna have to do this. I wanna go back to you, Jonika, and ask you about specifically this initiative that we have with your organization and the scholarship, the Women in Tech Scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
What we've seen a lot of movement in the tech industry to really be more diverse, be more conscious also of accessibility. When you think about our journey there, the tech journey to be more diverse, more accessible, where do you think we are in that journey? Are we still at the beginning? Have we made good enough progress? Are we near the end? Like, how far of a journey is it in your mind, and how much have we actually accomplished already?
And okay, disclaimer, this is Jonika's view, not Google's view. I think we're not at the beginning, but I definitely think we're nowhere near the middle. I look at my own experience. Nobody taught me how to build a resume. And as I look at how I built it, it was all wrong. I didn't have any connections. I'm coming here with no connections. So it's literally like fighting blindfolded, or like having red glasses and nobody's telling you that you're looking at the world the wrong way. Like everyone knows the rules, but you don't know the rules. And there's nobody to tell you that that's not how you build the resume. That's not how you get the head. Bias for action is not the only thing. Relationships are really important. Don't burn bridges and trying to get shit done. Sorry. And you learn that the hard way. And that's when you realize, man, someone should have told me this. The other problem why I think the system is so broken, the education you already covered on how broken it is, but I really think it's a broken system for companies like Google and others to hire people that have got this 4+ year college. Not everyone's got the money to pay for that 4+ years of college. And I definitely didn't have the money. I had to have a church fundraising for me. I had to do 3+ jobs. And how many of people is it like me that try to do it and still can't do it? So the system of trying to get the education and bringing them for employment is also broken. I think we're recognizing that. Google is, through the efforts of Women in Tech, which was actually through the developer relations team, through the funds that we're giving with google.org to nonprofits that recognize that there is racial injustice out there and we've got to do something about it. We got to take these white blinders off and not think the road is flat, because it's not. But also recognizing that we got to start really early on in creating a desire for technology. And maybe it starts with my daughter's age. I have a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old. And my 10-year-old is excited right now, but I wonder when she's going to be like, no, I'm going to focus on something else. So short answer, I'm very excited because I think it is broken. I think there's a recognition that it is broken. And specifically at Google, there's a recognition that just because you hire people that don't fit the mold, it doesn't mean that they're going to stay. You will not retain them if it's business as usual. If we look around and we realize we're the only person that looks like how we do. And for all the folks that pointed out this is free life coaching, I want to share 2 books from 2 women that actually work with Google that are like solid and beautiful leaders. One is A Blessing, Women of Color Teaming Up to Lead, Empower, and Thrive, from Bonita Stewart, a beautiful leader. And the other one is Adventures of Women in Tech by Alana Karen. And it just talks about the fact that sometimes you thrive, sometimes you survive, and sometimes it's neither of the two. So I encourage you to read
I
those.
wish we had the links to buy those books. Next time I'll ask you for those. We'll see if we can actually include those links somewhere, maybe in the blog that we're going to post. When we're gonna actually probably wrap up this stream really quickly, but I just wanted to bring up Michael's point here. Michael is actually a student of ours. And I just want to connect back. We talked about the imposter syndrome and how you really want to build confidence in yourself. And I think I want to connect it to the fact that you when you are learning in a cohort and not on your own, you have a structure of people that are experiencing what you're experiencing, and they are going to be the ones helping you, reinforce that notion that, hey, yeah, maybe you're feeling weaker right now because you don't know everything that the person that's going to ask you a question knows. But I think that structure in place, having those people to kind of pump you up, hey, you're going to have it, you're going to do it. I see that all the time on Discord, on Slack, in many communities. It's super important. I mean, that you don't want to be with others just to learn. You also want to be with others because you're going to have that support available to you when you're going to need it. So
I'll add a point there, Ludo, because the one
yes, go
thing that
for
I
it.
real super quickly, so we don't keep Kate. The one thing that I realized when people would tell me, Jonika, I really want to help you, and then I'd be like, oh, but you're so busy. I will just say, get an ally, get a coach, get a mentor. And if someone is saying, I really want to help you, they're saying it because they see something in you.
Yeah.
And they really want to help you. So in addition to the community, the friends, everyone that's supporting you, take off that person that is saying, I want to help you, because they see something in you that maybe you don't see in yourself yet. And they find value in it. So say yes, don't turn it down.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
totally.
One of my favorite quotes on that note is, we rise by lifting others.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure many have heard that. It's Robert Ingersoll, I think. Anyway, we rise by lifting others. It's a great philosophy to have. And it's really about team, right? We're doing this together, going through this experience together. Yeah. And if you don't mind, Ludo, I just wanted to end.
I was going to ask you, Kate, please wrap this stream for us. I know
just
you have
my
a hot
spiel, at least. I want to end my spiel. I was going to say, I have kind of 3 like advice points, I guess, because you had said that too, if you're new or as somebody's starting out or they're going through this thinking, what the heck do I do? So I would say 1, strive for excellence in what you do. So if you're going to do it, do it, take it seriously, commit to it, make the time, do your best. 2, I would say be open to the possibilities in front of you. I remind you of that example of me at the city of Chicago, right? And thinking, I can't do this. And then someone saying, yeah, you can do it. I got your back. So be open to the possibilities. And then the last thing I would say is upskill yourself, do it. So this is the time in the world, in the history of the world, with this massive tech talent shortage, to get into tech. So whatever route you do it, or however you do it, really increase your tech fluency. It is the skill that is the most in demand in the market. So do it. This is the time.
It's a great way to close this stream. I want to thank you both, Jonika and Kate, for joining me. It's been really fun. I hope it was a pleasure to watch as well for everyone out there. You can find Kate and Jonika on LinkedIn if you want to connect with them.
Yes.
I'm sure that they'll welcome that. It's a real pleasure to be partnering with your organization. And so I'm looking forward to continuing that. And again, have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Happy
Thanks,
Friday.
everybody.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.